This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and today I'm with Kathy Finn. She's president of UFCW 770 in Los Angeles, and we're going to be talking about a major merger which can affect not only union working people, but many communities across the United States. So welcome to our show, Kathy.
Thank you.
So Kathy, why don't we talk about this merger, proposed merger of Kroger and Albertson, and why you and your union, as well as many community people, feel that this is a threat to not only the workers, but the public.
Yeah, well, there have been a lot of grocery mergers over the years, and now there are basically 5 large grocery companies that control 60% of grocery sales in the United States. And 2 of those 5 are trying to merge right now, and that's Kroger and Albertsons. So Kroger, folks may not know this, but they own so many small chains that people shop at all around the country. Here in Southern California, they own both Food for Less and Ralphs, and they want to buy Albertsons. And here in Southern California, Albertsons obviously owns Albertsons, but they also own Vons and Pavilions. So a number of the places, traditional grocery stores where people shop, are going to be, if this goes through, would be owned by one major chain. And the problem with that is it's just monopolistic. As fewer and fewer companies are controlling people's access to groceries, they have the ability to, raise prices on consumers because people don't have much other choice. They have the ability to lower the prices that they pay to suppliers, where they buy their groceries and other products from. So, growers and companies that supply all the food that's in the grocery store, they, lower the price on them, and it gives them the monopolistic power to be able to lower wages, working conditions, and benefits that they pay to their workers. And basically all of that results in higher profit for the CEOs of the companies, but it doesn't result in any benefit for communities, for workers, including the workers who work for food suppliers who then have downward pressure, on their labor costs as well.
And it seems like you have a history of store closures as well when these mergers take place, affecting communities. Has that been a problem for workers and for communities in Southern California and nationally?
Absolutely. I mean, I know the experience here in LA, especially. So 25, 30, 35 years ago, there were so many chains in Southern California, and particularly in Los Angeles. There used to be Lucky's. There used to be, Market Basket, there was Boys Market, there was Hughes Market, there was Viva, there was ABC Market. Many, operated in South LA, and East LA, both of which have become, somewhat food deserts, or, places where it's harder to get a major grocery store to come these days. And all of those chains have been gobbled up by, and there was Safeway, have been gobbled up by the 2 major chains that exist now, Ralphs and Albertsons. And that has resulted in many shuttered stores, and many lost jobs, particularly, jobs, good union jobs, and has resulted in it being more difficult for people to access healthy food, at affordable prices. Inflation, which is happening now, is in some ways a result of that, and the companies basically passing that inflation and more onto consumers. In fact, the CEO of Ralph's, Rodney McMullen, has said in a recorded statement that, inflation is good for them because they just pass it on to the consumer, and, it generally results in more profit for the companies.
And your members have gone through a very difficult situation with COVID, with getting PPE. Many of your members have died. not only in the grocery division, but also food processing plants. I mean, it seems like it's one thing after another that your members are going through. It's another nightmare with these mergers.
Absolutely. So our members, all of the members of UFCW Local 770, were deemed essential at the beginning of the pandemic. So all of them continued working every day while pretty much everybody else was at home. The only places that were open to the public were grocery stores and drugstores. And our members were working there, being exposed to the public. Hundreds of people, anyone who shopped at a grocery store at the beginning of the pandemic knows there were, people, there was a run on food and toilet paper. Of course, people were in the stores fighting over product. There would be hundreds of people in lines outside the front of the store. And our members had to come into contact with all those people. So as you said, we had our members sickened, their family members became sick. They brought it home to their families. They don't live in situations where they can easily separate in their homes. And many of our members lost their own lives or lives of their family members as a result of being essential workers. And, we say, and they say, if they're so essential, like treat them like they're essential. They should be treated like essential workers, not like disposable workers. And in our packing house plants, those of course continued to operate throughout the entire pandemic. Food is essential. And so all the people who work in the food chain, including farm workers, food processing, food packaging workers, grocery store workers, are all extremely essential parts of the food chain, and had to continue working during the pandemic. And they are the folks who were most heavily impacted by illness, by long COVID, hospitalizations, death amongst them, and so sadly their family members as well.
And this issue of monopolization, the threat to the communities and workers, it seems like there are laws supposedly to protect against monopolization. What would this merger mean as far as monopolization in the United States? What percentage of the market would this merged companies have? And why aren't government agencies stopping it? And what can people do to stop it from continuing?
So there are laws that are supposed to prevent this monopoly, and there is the Federal Trade Commission, which is an agency of the federal government, which oversees and approves mergers. 5 presidents of UFCW local unions, actually the largest UFCW locals in the country, five presidents, including me, went back last week to talk to the FTC about the merger. And I believe that the FTC should, and I believe, hopefully they will not approve this merger. At which point, it's my understanding that the company can then go to court. And it depends what a judge says about whether these laws are actually enforced. I mean, we know in other industries, telecommunications, there are a number of other industries where mergers continue to happen until, the consumer's choices are so incredibly limited. So just as an example, back in 2015, this was the most recent big merger in Southern California when Albertsons bought Safeway, and Safeway had already bought Vons and Pavilions, and those two companies merged. The FTC, in order to avoid, a monopoly, rather than just disapproving the merger, approved the merger, but said they had to divest or sell a number of stores to another company. But the other company that came in, which was Hagen, bought in Southern California 85 of the stores and was going to operate another chain to create competition. The problem is a small chain like that can't compete with such a huge chain like Albertsons and Ralphs. And they went out of business in 6 months, and about 8,000 workers lost their jobs. and thousands of more people lost their neighborhood grocery store. Many of those stores never reopened. And there are many neighborhoods that now have lost a choice of a place to go. I'm not exactly sure the exact amount of the market that Ralphs and Albertsons control, but I do know that if this merger goes through, 4 companies will control 60% of all grocery sales in the United States. Now, the number one is Walmart. So they have the biggest share of that 60%, but Kroger and Albertsons, once they merge, will be, next behind Walmart. So we're going to be left with very few choices in terms of major grocery stores, places for consumers to shop, and places for workers to have a decent job.
And it seems like it's not just obviously in the grocery industry, the banks, the failure of the banks, mergers of the banks, and within capitalism systemically, it seems like monopolization is their only solution to increasing their profits. They want to have more profits, and to do that is monopolize and control more of the market.
Exactly. That's exactly true. And the grocery companies throughout the pandemic made huge profits. I mean, their profits more than doubled. I think they went up, I don't know, like, I'm not sure exactly the amount, but their profits more than doubled. Their cash on hand is huge amounts. And as part of this merger, I want people to know that already Albertsons, as part of the merger deal, but before the merger even went through, paid out $4 billion in dividends to their shareholders. And $4 billion represents about 1/3 of the value of the company. So that's money that could have been used to lower prices. It could have been used to pay workers. It could have been used to remodel stores. It could have been used to be reinvested into the company. But instead, they paid, it resulted in a dividend of like $6 per share. So, some small shareholders got a little bit of money. But certain large shareholders at the very top, I think the largest shareholder got $1 billion all to himself of that $4 billion. And it's just basically, it's stealing. It's just taking money, ripping, resources out of the company so that they can merge with the remaining shell of the company is what then becomes, part of Ralph's. So that's how these companies operate. It's all about how much profit can be returned to the large shareholders and CEOs of the company, and not about how to really make it a viable business. Because to take 1/3 of the whole value of the company and just basically give it away is not how you run a good business.
And what can people do? I know that if and I'm in Northern California, Safeways may be closed as a result of this merger. People in different communities will be affected, workers as well. Is there any national campaign with rallies, education campaign, labor councils having meetings, community labor meetings, the effect of closures, going to the communities where people have already been affected, the lesson of the past mergers and how it's affected communities? And has the California legislature, the Attorney General Rob Bonta, taken a position against the merger? It seems like it's a no-brainer for California to say we've gone through this before, and the effect has been detrimental, particularly Black and brown poor communities. It seems like something that the California people and the legislature should take a strong stand in, and the governor, as Governor Newsom, opposed the merger.
Yeah, so absolutely. So Rob Bonta's staff actually was on our call with the FTC a couple weeks ago. So I do think there's still research to be done. The merger, even the companies are saying they don't expect to get approval of the merger until early 2024. So I do think that a lot of the government agencies that have the ability to stop the merger I don't think they've come out exactly with a full position yet, because there's still a lot of research happening. But I have confidence that the FTC, as well as the attorney generals of several states, including Rob Bonta's office, will see this merger for what it is and will do everything they can to stop it ultimately. So they do have time though, before the anticipated approval date. So, you know, we have kind of a long game, but there will be many actions. There will be a lot of more information coming out about the merger. And we do hope that the communities come out. We're going to be having some rallies in the next couple of weeks. We'll be putting that up on the Stop the Merger website. And we hope that people come out to those rallies. We'll be in front of some of the stores, educating customers and handing out information about what the merger will do. So, I mean, I do think, and I appreciate what you're doing here to educate the public, because people have to, you know, understand it's not just in the grocery industry, as you mentioned.
Well, the airlines and the railroads, I mean, they wouldn't give money to buy software at Southwest Airlines because they wanted to have buybacks and stock dividends. And then the railroad, Norfolk Southern, I mean, the railroad wrecks because they won't spend money on staff of the trains. It seems like, again, it's a systemic problem that these owners are just hell-bent on more profits, regardless of the cost to the people, communities.
Well, that's the world we live in, controlled by Wall Street. And, you know, while there have been, Occupy Wall Street and, the 1% and different movements about waking people up to the way that our country is totally controlled by business interests and, the 1% and Wall Street, we need to do more for people to understand how their safety, their health, their food, their housing, their healthcare. There's a lot of mergers in healthcare as well. All of those things are controlled by these companies, and the more power they get, the more they, focus on profit for themselves and not the good of the whole. And, it's got to turn around. It's just got to turn around. We can't continue to go in this direction. We're going to end up, like the biggest third world country in the world, as, it's less than 1%, probably the 0.1% are so incredibly wealthy. And, the rest of everyone is doing worse and worse and worse as the richest get richer and richer.
Yeah, well, the IMF and the World Bank, controlled by the United States, implement austerity, privatization, deregulation in other countries. Chile, this is the 50th anniversary of the coup in Chile, and a lot of the privatization of pension plans. All those things now are what they're pushing for in the United States. So it has relevance as far as what's going on in the rest of the world and here in the United States.
Yeah, so we actually just launched a website, nogrocerymerger.com. But if you search for Stop the Merger, it comes up. And it's this website it says United to Stop the Kroger Albertsons Merger. It's made up of UFCW locals from around the country, as well as I think about 100 community groups have already signed on. And this has a lot of information about the merger. And it also has up here will be the actions that we'll be taking. And so if people want to get involved, but hundreds of community groups, you can scroll through, there's hundreds of community groups already that have signed on to stop the merger, and folks can add their organization to the effort and get information about actions that are coming up and things that they can do to help stop the merger.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. We've been talking with Kathy Finn, president of UFCW 770 in Los Angeles. So thanks for the information, and hopefully we can stop another merger that's going to hurt workers and hurt communities in California and nationally. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, Steve.